it's complicated. I had some experience with the Oracle module on
Yep.
FP&A and the financial reporting module, and it was and they this company, it was client. This company had some pretty good SQL writers and some pretty good talent in IT, and they ended up giving up on it. It was just so much work just to get it banged into place and get it to work for them.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, hey guys. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be joining from. And today we have a very interesting product that we are going to review. It's called Aleph. I hope I am pronouncing it right. I don't know where the word comes from. Maybe we can have a little lesson from Andy, on the word origin.
I
But
actually have that one, Sam.
okay, so tell me.
The name is a nod to a George Louis Borges short story, A Point in Space That Contains All Other Points.
Oh,
Interesting. That's very technical.
It's very
And
technical, and it's
and
kind of futuristic, I guess.
yeah, and technical is something we don't talk about in this show. I mean, it's all some FP&A, ERP stuff, but nothing technical. In any case, I mean, if you are joining for the first time, for this webinar series, the best way to get updated of these sessions would be on events and webinar page on elevateiq.com, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. On that note, we'll start with our intros, and then we'll kick off the presentation. Quickly about me, Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent vendor agnostic technology advisory firm. We help customers with any sort of technology strategy, technology selection, and change management. On that note, Phil, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. I'm Phil Kerper. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Sam, for the invite. I'm managing director of Ringling Business Solutions, and we leverage over 40 years of CEO experience to help our clients take their IT investments and get good business results.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. Andy, do you want to go next?
absolutely. My name is Andy Pratico. I've been involved with ERP software specifically for manufacturers all my life. I've worked with manufacturers all over the US, all over Canada, and I also help and teach companies how to uncover the truth about ERPs before they buy. Hopefully, I help the world just a little bit.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And I'm actually going to share my screen. We can
And
start with
I'm an ERP historian, I'm told.
you
I
are
noticed that in my post.
you got too many names, Andy. You
I
have ERP Santa Claus, ERP,
Yeah, I
but
got
everything
everything
has some
going.
flavor of ERP in that, I guess.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm
right.
trying to coin a new one for you, Andy, every other week on these.
I like that historian.
Yeah.
That makes me sound, instead of saying you're really old, you're a historian. That's a nice use.
Well, yeah, that, or we can say Professor ERP.
Professor, there you go.
That's
Yeah.
that's a promotion, I guess.
Write that one down, Phil.
So that's going to
It's
be your
in there.
next LinkedIn USP, Andy. Are you changing that from your ERP Santa Claus to ERP Professor?
There you go.
All right, guys, let's get started. So here, we are talking about Aleph. And in this case, we have FP&A. Last few sessions that we have done, I mean, they were all ERP, AI native ERP. Now we are talking about FP&A. FP&A uses slightly different terminology. So in their case, their community uses something like Gen 3. We'll talk about that, how relevant that is and how these generations differ. I don't know if you guys are going to have any sort of background in that. We'll talk about that. But we are going to review a lot of different FP&A solution. Obviously, right now we are reviewing some of the newer vendors from the AI native perspective. In their case as well, they are positioning themselves as AI native, as everybody. But for the most part, when you look at the solution, when you look at the AI native capabilities, they are not there in their case. So it's slightly different. Again, they might not be as AI native as some other ones, but we don't have a lot of candidates, I would say, that are truly AI native at this point of time. We don't know how the FP&A market is going to evolve, or if FP&A as a category is going to merge with ERP. There is a possibility that a lot of different AI native ERP solutions that we have reviewed, they sort of have the FP&A capabilities combined, just because they are claiming that, you know what, you don't need that ERP rigid structure, and you can accomplish a lot of FP&A workflows that were not traditionally possible. So I don't know what is going to happen to this category, but at this point of time, there are a lot of AI native FP&A vendors in the market that are claiming at least this from the marketing perspective. And in their case, in the case of Aleph, they are doing that as well. Just to give you some context around how we do these reviews. So some of the sources that we utilize is, in this case, we have the historical releases, customer stories, product design analysis, Reddit reviews, user reviews, all of those sources we have utilized for this one. Those are our go-to resources in general. For a review, we rely on any public information. So if you look at their overarching position, it's easier FP&A, and we'll talk about the whole aspect of easy, why they are easy, and what you are going to miss based on that easiness aspect. There are always going to be pros and cons of each decision. So we always look at these things comprehensively, but they are positioning themselves as more of the easier FP&A, and they will be easier FP&A. Now, pre-integrated with hundreds of enterprise software. Now, this is a very tricky topic as well. Some of the enterprise solutions may not be as integrated just because their data models are very different natively. These guys are taking very different approach. It's a very SaaS approach that you may have heard us speaking about in other AI native ERP as well. So in this case too, they are able to integrate easily, but they are also utilizing some technologies. We'll talk about that technology as well. And that's what is helping them in getting all of these integrations, because these integrations are not necessarily the kind of transactional integration that you need for ERP-centric workflows. This integration is very different. Here, the only thing you are doing is you are getting a bunch of data, and that's it. You are dumping it somewhere. You almost have a sandbox because this is not touching your operation, so you can do pretty much whatever you want. So in general, when you look at FP&A workloads, they are meant to be slightly easier because, again, they don't disrupt your core business processes, core transactions. That's why generally FP&A is easier. But then FP&A has a very different scope in terms of what you should be accomplishing. So we'll talk about that as well. But in this case, in their case, they are definitely a lot more integrated than other FP&A players that we are going to review and we are going to touch on. Overall learning curve, I guess one of the problems, and I don't know, Andy or Phil, if you guys have used personally any of the FP&A platforms, sometimes they could be much harder than ERP, and sometimes people don't get why they would be harder than ERP because they are supposed to be very technical platform. Obviously, from the sales perspective, each vendor is going to make it sound that, okay, it's all very easy, but you need to have very deep knowledge of SQL, at least to some degree. And if sometimes you also require very deep knowledge of their proprietary scripting, platform that is going to help you in creating the kind of reporting that you're looking for. So FP&A gets very complex in general, just like your ERP. It just different product, different workflow, different category.
Yeah, I echo that, Sam. It's complicated. I had some experience with the Oracle module on FP&A and the financial reporting module, and it was this company, it was client. This company had some pretty good SQL writers and some pretty good talent in IT, and they ended up giving up on it. It was just so much work just to get it banged into place and get it to work for them. And then on the smaller experiences of just report writing, it's usually going through an IT person or an ambitious person who happens to know SQL who's in a different function that really has to spearhead getting the reports put together.
Yeah, and I personally struggled as well, to be completely honest. And even with some very simpler platforms, I'm not even talking about the complex ones. So again, they are meant to be very technical platform, the way they work, and that's where these guys are talking about the easiness of the product, because you may not have to learn the proprietary scripting language or proprietary language that they might have from the reporting perspective. So what these guys are claiming that you can live, in your Excel and a spreadsheet. But again, we'll talk about, where you are going to hit into limitation with that approach. There are a lot of vendors that, talk about this, that, okay, right now you are doing your planning in Excel, you are getting all of that data from your ERP, CRM, and if you utilize tool, obviously you are going to have governance security, but this governance and security is very different compared to your transactional workflows. Here you are simply trying to protect data versus protecting transactional integrity. Those two are two completely different things. But the whole idea when they say that you can be in your Excel, meaning you probably will build the complete reporting yourself, meaning there is not going to be much of the pre-baked capabilities. The more you are going to ask for the pre-baked capabilities, that's where you get into that proprietary intel and the steep learning curve that Phil was talking about. So in this case, the whole idea of tool is it's designed to be simple, but then if you are comparing this with other FP&A platforms, it's not one to one. Okay, so you are just not going to get as much functionality. You have to build yourself inside Excel. So obviously, you need to be very deep in the Excel reporting as well. It's not going to be as easy, and even then, you might not be able to accomplish the same results as you would the slightly bigger platforms, other platforms. But again, they are not going to be as easy. I'll keep going here unless you guys have any other comments. So here, in terms of the competition, and we are going to review all of those. So you have Abacum, we are going to review them. And then you have Cube, Pigment, Drivetrain. Those are the newer ones, I would say. Then you have slightly more traditional. They are going to have a lot more enterprise footprint, and we'll talk about the strategy of each of the vendor briefly. But obviously, we are going to have in-depth review for each of the solution, each of the platform, how they attack the market, and where their core advantage is. So you have Anaplan, which is very enterprise connected planning centric platform. You have Planful. Planful is very complex as well. But again, they try to target mid-market. Profix, Vina as well. They all target mid-market, I would say, very Excel-oriented platforms.
Do you think Anaplan targets mid-market?
No. No. So Anaplan, the way, I mean, obviously they will tell you that they target pretty much everything, I guess.
Of course.
Right? That's how every vendor is. But the reality is, I mean, the way the platform is designed, it's supposed to be a very horizontal platform. It's not as vertical as what you are going to find with the other platforms. And what they are trying to do is they are trying to connect all of the planning workloads, meaning you are going to have FP&A plus SNOP plus your HR. Nobody has that complete picture, to be completely honest. Very few vendors would have. And in the mid-market, you might not be able to use the connected planning platform either, because departments are fairly siloed. They make their own decisions. So it might be much harder to integrate. Sometimes they are going to get SNOP platform integrated as part of ERP. Sometimes they are going to have that integrated as part of CRM. So what are you going to do with that if you are going to get connected planning? So, so it's always tricky, right? In how each of the vendor would position. But when you are trying to build central connected capability, and then you have a lot of budget to mold the platform and mold your enterprise workflows the way you want, that's where Anaplan is probably going to be fit. But obviously, you are looking at very, very, very large consulting dollars, as well as very steep learning curve. Andy, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, I'll keep going here. So here, overall context is they are among 4 or 5 leading AI native options. But in this case, I think they would be more AI powered. We just did not see any AI native capabilities. To be completely honest, we really wanted to see some AI native capabilities in FP&A, because FP&A is where the real play is of AI native capabilities, but I think vendors are not there, or they are feeling that they might not have a real market for FP&A as a category, especially when a lot of different AI native ERPs are positioning them for the FP&A use cases as well. So again, it's very early to predict at this point of time how the market is going to evolve, but we just don't have as many real AI native vendors at this point of time. These guys are probably going to be AI powered, not necessarily AI native, even though they might be referring to that. Um, so the logos that we have seen whose markets are being disrupted, you have Vina, you have Profex, Planful, and Solver. For the most part, these guys are relatively smaller in terms of their size of the solution. We are not going to have tiers for these guys just yet. We don't have tiers for FP&A category. Hopefully, we can build that as Elevate IQ. But these guys are going to be, let's say, if we were to design their tier, they would be somewhere around maybe tier 5, tier 6, somewhere around that. In those tier 7, I don't know if we are going to have all 7 for FP&A, but they would be towards the lower end.
And Sam, to that, even though they've been around since 2000, their CEO actually during COVID built this product MVP, an MVP version of this. So that's when it was originally built. They I found they have 66 employees is the most current number I could find about the size that they are.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that assessment. Phil, they must be relatively smaller. But I'll tell you this, the majority of the smaller FP&A vendors that we have, they are on a smaller side. Unless you talk about Planfuls of the world or Plans of the world, obviously they are very enterprise companies. They are probably going to have, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 employees. But I don't know if any other vendors can match that. I would say Profex or Vena, they must be probably closer to 1,000, maybe more. They are slightly more funded, but I didn't know that they were that old. I was thinking that they are comparatively newer. So thanks for
Right. Well, they emerged from stealth in late 23, but Albert Ganzi wrote the original program. Apparently, is what I found during the pandemic. And then Pires de Rosa, he's a PhD from MIT with DocuSign experience. He joined him in 2021. And then they came out, they really got funding in 23 when they got their initial, I think it was $5 million.
Yeah, perfect. So it's still very new, right? Just 5 years.
Yeah. Still young. And there's, you said the simplified exchange. There's some things in here, that are very interesting for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Phil, for that. And again, today we just don't have FP&A quadrant. Hopefully we can build that as Elevate IQ. So we just don't have that. I'll keep moving here. Now, overall, I guess the category overlap, and there is always overlap between, different categories. So if you look at the majority of the FP&A solution, they would not have as much overlap with ERP unless they just don't know what they are doing. Sometimes they might have overlap with BI, but again, the intent of these platforms is not necessarily BI, even though the core intent would be reporting. But in general, the purpose of FP&A is to do future what if analysis, future centric planning. Budgeting and planning is what you do inside FP&A. BI generally is supposed to be the overarching layer, combining pretty much everything from the reporting perspective. Sometimes those could be current data sets as well. So companies are generally confused between how the data warehouse BI and FP&A overlap. And obviously FP&A software in general, they get very expensive too. Sometimes you are going to pay in terms of the license as much as your ERP, and companies get that and they wonder, okay, what am I doing with this again? Because they really struggle to find value with these software. So unless you are very sophisticated in your planning and budgeting process where you have to combine a lot of different data sources, you would probably need something like FP&A. But again, pay attention to the category, and here the category overlap for Aleph would be between FP&A and BI. Their BI may be slightly more flexible, but again, the majority of the platforms are fairly similar. They are not necessarily designed for BI use cases. They just have a dashboard on top of your data sets, the way your ERP vendors are going to have. That's the core intent of having the dashboard or BI capabilities. It's not anything more than that. Do I need to touch on any other points here? I think I'm good. I'm actually going to move to the next one, unless you guys want to touch on anything else. So here, the right comparison for this category would be Abacum is probably the one that is probably going to be close. Drivetrain Cube, Pluvo is probably going to be another one that you need to pay attention to. So if you're reviewing these together, then you are probably closer to your assessment. If you are comparing Aleph with Anaplan, that could be a little far off, and you might not be comparing the right categories. Even with Planful, I don't know if that is a fair comparison with Planful. So these are probably the closest comparison for Aleph. Again, try to review these if you are interested in something like Aleph. Aleph, you are going to find in very SaaS and technology-centric industries. That's where we are finding the majority of the AI native platforms. That's where Aleph does really well. Aleph is very well prevalent in NetSuite-centric, workloads, installed base. That's where they have the majority of the integration. You might find challenges with some other, ERPs if they are not going to be as aligned with how NetSuite markets or some of these AI native companies market. So that's where the market alignment is. Again, that's going to be in SaaS, tech, etc. from the industry perspective. So overall, the advantages of Aleph, and we are not going to touch all of them for the other ones. Here, it's AI powered. They have some AI capabilities. It's just not as the AI native. Fast implementation, we'll talk about that again. And overall, I guess the limited proprietary formula as well as the language, that is the aspect that Phil was talking about as well. So it's not just SQL, it's also proprietary language that you don't have to master or learn. You are simply relying on your Excel or Google Sheets. So that's going to be a key advantage. And then obviously you have a little easy dashboarding capabilities. But again, I mean, that could be with pretty much everything, I guess. The majority of the integrations that you are going to find, they are probably going to be very SaaS or technology industry friendly. SaaS ERP ecosystems is probably the right term for that. So those are some of the advantages. Some things that you need to be careful about. The way we are looking at this, I mean, it's coming across as more of the connector. It's not the real FP&A. So obviously you are going to have all of those connectivity with many different data sources, but you are sort of on your own when you try to design these reports and reporting capabilities and what if scenarios. That is going to be a very hard lift if you have very sophisticated, budgeting process. Let's say if you are moving from Anaplan, Planful, that could be a very heavy lift, even though it might be slightly easier to use, but you have to invest a lot to build similar capabilities. Now, if you have never been on an FP&A platform, this could be great because you just don't have as much steep learning curve, and hopefully the consulting is going to be cheaper as well on this. So that's the advantage. Now, majority of the other ones that you are going to look at, they are going to have fairly similar capabilities as well as the advantages, disadvantages, and that's why we are trying to group them in similar categories in terms of the comparison. So I'll keep moving here. And we'll focus on their stories and their commentary from the marketing perspective. And this is coming from 2023. Phil, I think you were mentioning this date. This is their inception date, I believe.
It's one they, the terms we use these days came out of hibernation, or came out of stealth, pardon me. So it's when they really went public and started pushing.
Exactly. And that's the date, I guess, that's what matters, I guess, right? I don't know if you have been developing for the last 20 years, who cares?
It's interesting. He was stuck at home in COVID, and this is what he decided to build. I find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies did that, to be completely honest. Okay, so here, obviously, they got funding from Bean Capital Ventures. They have some big names in terms of the investors, which is a huge positive sign for us. And this is something that we look for. If somebody is invested by these investors, then we definitely want to pay attention to them. In terms terms of their commentary, they have roughly 150 plus data sources pre-integrated. And again, when you talk about these many data sources with other platforms, sometimes they might not have all of that. You have to build that. I don't know where the challenges are because these guys, what they have done, and we'll talk in depth about this particular point. I think they are using the technology called 5tran, and 5tran, what it does is it makes the whole data ingestion much easier. So my question always is, if these guys are able to do that, how come other companies are not able to do the same? Obviously, they must have a lot of challenges, and sometimes that could be because of the kind of data layers that they have. SaaS data model in general is flatter, so it's much easier with these data models, and that could be the reason why these guys are not necessarily integrated with other ERP systems, just because the data is far more hierarchical, so it's much more difficult. And sometimes, I mean, that's proprietary too, so it's not as open as what you might be able to do in these ecosystems.
Sam, I found one other round of funding. I didn't think I saw it on the slide.
Yeah.
In September 25, they did Series B round for 29 million. And so, and Bain was involved in that one again, along with a couple of other people. So that totals 46 million.
So, I mean, we are coming across these guys a lot, to be completely honest, in our client base as well. So that's how we know them, and we are sort of excited about them. Generally, when customers start requesting any companies or logos, that's where they get on our radar. So these guys are definitely very well known, at least in the SaaS space. And they have some really big logos, and they are very popular in the NetSuite ecosystem, in all of those AI native ecosystems. And I think we saw their logo with the AI native systems that we have reviewed. Pretty much everybody has an integration with these guys, the newer ones. Okay, so here they are talking about they started this journey 3 years ago. I think this is the point that you were trying to mention, Phil. And these are different investors. I think there are some really big names here. So again, that's what is exciting about this company. Airbase is very popular overall from SaaS perspective. You have somebody involved from the Anaplan perspective as well, which is a huge sign. Service Titan is like one of the biggest unicorn out there. It's a massive success. So obviously you have people from Service Titan involved. So again, these are great validation for us that you have some really good team backing them up. Now, some very interesting feature sets. So this is coming from 2024, and they had introduced Slack. And obviously, when you talk about Slack, I don't know how many different manufacturing companies or industrial companies are going to use Slack. Generally, you would find Slack where you have a lot of presence from Salesforce in general, because obviously Slack is owned by Salesforce now. But traditionally also Slack was very prevalent in the startup ecosystem, tech ecosystem. Obviously they'll call themselves modern. And everybody else who is not using Slack is probably not modern.
Legacy. Yeah, the rest of us are all legacy.
Right.
Or historians.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you can draw a lot of different patterns in how this is penetrated and what kind of features they are trying to release. So obviously the reason why they are trying to release an app within Slack is because Slack is very prevalent in the SaaS community, and that's how you can deduce that, okay, they are obviously targeting SaaS tech. Those are the industries that are their go-to industries, and that's where we have come across them as well.
Yeah, and that's a good tell. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, what is Slack?
Like Microsoft Teams, Andy? I'm pretty sure you have used Microsoft Teams.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. It's nothing more than that.
Oh, okay.
Just that kind of that light. But I was going to say it's a good tell for folks that are looking at any software. Their partners typically, especially when they're new, I would say that, they didn't just sit down one day and say, let's partner with Slack. They had customers or potential customers who wanted that integration, and that's what made it up their board and ended up making it a priority. So it's a nice tell who people partner with on what customer groups they're likely serving.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at Salesforce, I mean, they are trying to make the whole interaction very community centric, Slack centric. They are trying to release their entire agentic marketplace through Slack interface. Hopefully, these guys are going to release there as well, just because they are targeting very similar customer base. So great points, guys. Thank you so much. So here we had that comment as well.
Oh,
29
there
million.
it is. I
Yeah.
thought I saw it, and I just didn't see it on
Yeah.
first page. Pardon me.
Yeah, when you mentioned it, I was going to say probably the
Okay,
next.
so it's there. It's there.
You generally have so much text on the slides; it's very hard to notice anything, I guess, here.
No, I must have blown by that.
All right, so let's keep going here. So here they had done, 29 million in 2025. And again, I mean, these investors, when we look at Bain or even Y Combinator, is very good. Generally, the companies that come out of them, they are very good. We pay attention to them in general. So total funding 46 million, which is not a lot compared to the other companies, but it's still very good. For the
Yeah, I was
category.
thinking about that. Given their scope, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Right. If
Yeah.
they were trying to really be an enterprise scaled vision or really broaden out past the bubble that you put in the spot you put them in, I would say that's light, but that might not be bad for where they're at.
So in terms of their valuation, they are probably going to be roughly what, $500 million maybe,
Yeah.
which is very, very tiny for enterprise software company. I don't know how many investors are going to be excited about it because they have other unicorns that they can attack.
Yeah, and that's why I don't know that they're. I don't. I think they look like they're headed towards niche because of that
Yeah.
and other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. But again, I mean, they are very well penetrated, and I don't know why funding is so low, but we have seen them a lot, pretty much everywhere. They are very hot. Okay, so we'll keep going here. So this is a customer story. So this is coming from Merge. Merge is their customer, which is predominantly a technical platform, I guess. So Merge is a unified API that normalizes data across accounting, HRIS, ATS, CRM for thousands of B2B SaaS companies. So they are just a kind of integration platform. I think we saw one more there when we reviewed. I believe Dual Entry was the one that were going after a very similar platform. I don't think it was Merge, if I remember correctly, in that review. They had, and that's how they had got like 40,000 integrations they were talking about because they went after something like this. So that's what is Merge. And obviously, sometimes, I mean, I don't know whether you guys have seen this or not. Investors, what they are trying to promote and champion is that sometimes, I mean, they are saying that if you use software from my own portfolio, then you don't even have to pay for licensing, I guess. So that's how aligned the strategy is from the portfolio perspective. So if they are going to have Aleph and Campfire, naturally there are going to be a lot of synergies and they are going to create strategies so that they go to market together. That's how these strategies are created at the portfolio level. And as a buyer, you need to pay attention to that because that's what creates alliances, political structures, I guess, that you need to navigate as a buyer. If you don't understand that, you might run into challenges. So in this case, obviously this is API. So there is going to be some sort of customer vendor relationship there, I guess, the way they are structured, right? So here they are talking about forecasting in Excel required, manually downloading, consolidating, and reformatting. So obviously they are coming from QuickBooks and Salesforce. So relatively smaller, I would say, but even very large SaaS companies, maybe on QuickBooks on Salesforce. Now, they have some more comments here. Eliminated the cumbersome tasks of working with manual export by using Aleph to ingest cross-system data, of course, using Merge API. So even though they are going to have their own connector, but they are not using that, they have to use Merge because obviously there is self-interest there, a little bit of bias, and that's how majority of the tech companies are because they have to eat their own dog food, I guess. Right. So that's what they have done. Now, again, I mean, this is more of the outlier. So that's why we like to call this out because as a customer, you are not going to have that luxury that you have either free resources or APIs where you are not paying. So this is not the right use case for you to compare, even though this is a great customer story, but it would be slightly more outlier from your perspective. Unless you are something like Merge, then it's a different case. Okay, I don't have anything else here that I want to highlight. I'll keep moving. So one more story here. this is DocuSketch, and DocuSketch is very interesting as well, and they are talking about software that take the hassle out of property restoration. And I think, Phil, this is your space. If my understanding is right, I think you are doing business in this space, so you can talk about the challenges and if this would be a fit.
Yeah, so the product here, the DocuSketch product, there's a bunch of versions of this that, like if you're going to remodel your home, for example, you can literally see exactly what it's going to look like. It's strong in real estate where that you can put your own furniture in a home you're looking at, make it empty and then put it in and see it. But in this particular use case, the focus of this company is for someone who's going to do work on your home, where that they can sketch it out and that can lead them to drawings, it can lead them to material requirements, it can lead them to purchase requirements. It's really handy for a contractor or an architect or engineer who's working in this space.
So generally, architecturally speaking, Phil, when you look at the space, I don't think they are very technology savvy as far as my understanding goes. Generally, they don't have like an ERP unless they are going to be really big. They don't necessarily understand ERP-centric processes or architecture for the most part. What they are going to have is some sort of field service solution that they might be using. In general, the whole construction space is very, 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 behind, I would say, in terms of their technology footprint. So they are not going to have ERP. In this case, I think they came out of QuickBooks or QuickBooks.
Yeah, this one is QuickBooks. But if you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, I think fifth bullet, if I'm counting that right, without the bandwidth for a full-scale ERP upgrade, DocuSketch needed a lightweight solution that could deliver quick wins. Well, that's why it aligns, right? That's what they were looking for. They didn't want to, and then back to the spreadsheet topic, if they don't have to learn kind of a new way of generating reports, they can kind of live in their spreadsheets, but with some prompts and things. I can see that being an interesting thing for a company like this to take a run at.
Yeah, so this is the driver that is coming from their private equity, and this is very common and natural. Private equity, they just don't like years. If you are going to quote them, you are already out. So they are looking for everything within 3 months. And obviously, it's very hard for any company to implement any sort of ERP within 3 months. And that's why FP&A makes sense for them. And that's why we believe that, FP&A as a category has a lot of potential. FP&A is a different problem than your ERP. So again, when you are starting on something and you don't want to change or disrupt your operations, you have pressure coming from your PE, and your goal is to simply create the reports, etc. Your operations are not necessarily cooperating with you to change their processes. That's where you should be installing FP&A. That's where you have the real play, and that's what they have done, which makes perfect sense because this you can probably implement in 3, maybe 6 months, and without changing anything from your operations perspective. So in this case, obviously, the investors, Summit Partners is obviously a big one. And if they acquire, then they are the first ones who are going to push for this. And that's what they have done in this particular case. Even the tech companies that you have here are going to be fairly behind in their capabilities, in their process maturity, etc. So obviously, they are not going to have any sort of ERP, even if they are going to be like as big as 100 million in probably ARR. Those can easily run on QuickBooks. And in this case, they have a lot of different entities, I believe. Generally, a lot of technology companies have that. So when they are trying to consolidate inside FP&A, and I think that trend we saw inside Everest as well, one company was trying to do that. Okay, I'll keep going here unless you guys have...
Yeah, just on the PE ready financial reports, just because that one rang out and you hit that pretty good. In order to make it through financial reviews with private equity board members, you have to be able in real time to be able to drill down and get answers, right? They're asking you difficult questions. So that drill down capability, that's talked about a little bit, it implies that it might be pretty good.
Yeah, but I mean, when you talk about real-time traceability, obviously that is very misleading, to be completely honest. So yes, you are going to get drilled down from the reporting perspective, but that's not the real-time drill down.
Yeah, but I'm going to, if they're claiming that, they probably shouldn't be. But I'm going to say in the use case, I'm just envisioning being this he's the VP of finance, but being the VP of finance and going to a monthly review with my PE sponsor, they're going to ask me questions, and I need to at that moment. It's still last period. It's not real time. What's happening today? But I still need to be able to very quickly say, okay, that variance is this, that, or the other thing, and often, just dumping information into a spreadsheet and building out a pivot table, you can do it, but it can be clunky.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, this is something that most of the FP&A systems would be able to do that. So it's not that just this one, I guess. The only thing you are getting here is those pre-integration, I guess. That is something which is easier. But the majority of them are going to have some sort of drill down. How real time that is going to be, that's always a question. But great points, guys. Okay, I'll keep moving here. So we have one more story, Life Straw. And they are water filtration solution. And they were on NetSuite, it seems. And they are talking about it wasn't always clean and complete from channel sources like Shopify and Amazon. And again, this is going to be a problem. So we love to talk about this one as well, because when you are going to have so many different systems and channels, especially when you are very DTC centric business or very e-commerce centric business, you don't want to dump all of that data inside your ERP. Generally, you are going to get a lot of noise. ERP data may not be as aligned with your with other channels, and it's just unnecessary. So that's where I guess, I mean, we see a lot of value with any of the FP&A solutions. So that's what these guys are doing. They are bringing all of that data inside their FP&A solution. NetSuite is just one of the data sources, but they are going to have many different data sources, including NetSuite. Obviously, NetSuite will tell you that, I mean, bring all of that inside NetSuite. That's what everybody does. But yeah, I mean, overall, from the data alignment, from the architecture perspective, I guess FP&A is probably a better candidate to bring multiple data sources. You want to bring inside ERP whatever matters to ERP from the transactional processing perspective. Everything else should probably reside inside FP&A.
And I found this story to be compelling. I thought this was a good one.
So tell us more. Why did you find it compelling?
Well, the ability to automatically clean NetSuite has been huge, okay? And you highlighted that. And finance reporting and variance analysis were automated. Okay, those are, especially for a small, to just growing company, you can tie up a lot of resources on those things. And so if they did, if those are true statements and it's coming from a customer, if those are true statements, and then you guys can tell me why that may or may not make it true, right? It's, sometimes there's ways to get customers to talk nice, but usually they don't lie outright. Those are, I could see being a small company and having that really help me.
Have you had experience with NetSuite, Phil?
Yes.
So
yes. It's great and limited at the same time.
So, guys, on that point, Phil, the point that you are trying to mention, and that's where I guess we see a real role for FP&A in the architecture, and the reason for that is because use cases such as this, when you talk about cleaning NetSuite data, okay, when you have to clean this data inside NetSuite, obviously that's going to be a nightmare inside any ERP, and it's not just NetSuite. Because again, ERP is designed for a very different purpose. You don't want to be cleaning data inside your, ERP system. FP&A for the most part is meant to be more of a sandbox. You can play as you like. Sure, some people might not agree with my comment that no, that is supposed to have some sort of legs as well. I mean, it's not pure sandbox, but technically you are not disrupting anything. It's supposed to be the whole purpose of FP&A is study, play as you like. There's no impact as such. And sure, you want to do automated cleaning, do it. I mean, we can recover, we can do whatever we want. It just does not have as much impact. And again, that's where we see the real value for FP&A. Whenever you want any sort of messy data, crappy data, external sources, you want to do any sort of correlation, that's what FP&A is really good at. And finance people love it because they don't have to talk to anybody else, I guess, when they have to do this. Okay. Unless you guys have any other comments on that story, I'll keep moving here. So this is coming from Churro. And this is the car sharing marketplace. So what they are going to be something like Uber or maybe Airbnb, I guess. what other example do we have for car sharing? I think those are probably the business model perspective. I guess those are probably the right comparables, right? Now, these guys have a lot of different international entities. In general, when you talk about any SaaS technology business, they seem to have a lot of different international entities for whatever reason, 90% of them, at least what we have seen. So obviously it becomes very challenging for them, especially if their size is not going to be as big and they might not be ready for consolidation. And from ERP perspective, they don't get as much benefits because their operations team, they just don't want to live inside ERP. Their project management teams, they just don't care for ERP. They don't even care for business, to be completely honest. That's how they are structured, I guess, right? So for them, ERP state may not be as beneficial unless they are at a point, maybe 100, 200, $300 million, then they might implement something like ERP. But even then, the scope of ERP is going to be limited. In those use cases, if you want to do consolidation inside FP&A, which might be okay, but then again, you might run into different challenges when you try to do that. So here they implemented this for revenue modeling as well as S1 filing process. And again, for those processes, I guess you are going to have very unique needs. And you are going to have very unique requirements. And generally, changing that state inside your operational system could be much harder. So obviously, the right place for that would be FP&A. Now, this blows my mind because when I look at a solution like this, and when I look at an agency like Y Combinator, why would somebody ask for on-prem hosting option? Tell me. I mean, this is mind-blowing because you are literally a factory creating SaaS companies and cloud companies, but you are asking for an on-prem option yourself. Can you believe this, guys?
Is that being
And they
asked
gave it to
by-
them.
Who's that being asked by, Sam?
This Y Combinator.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't you ask them and they said that yes, indeed, they have it, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they have an option. So I'll tell you why that matters and why they might ask for that. Because generally the resourcing requirement for FP&A are much higher. And I don't know if they are going to have any sort of data sensitivity requirements. Generally, when you talk about any sort of venture firms, any sort of investment, there are going to be requirements from the investors that might be funding them. So wherever they are receiving money, they have very strict requirements in terms of what they can do with data, and they might not be comfortable going to cloud. So sometimes the compliance requirements are coming from there. We have seen those cases when they are SEC affiliated brokers. I don't know the technical term for that. I don't remember. But generally, we have seen like the operational data must be completely separate. Investors' data must be completely separate as well. So that could be the reason why they might be requesting for that. But this is a very interesting ask. And
I went down the rabbit hole of data security as well when I saw that. And I think that's a fair point. They do state somewhere that I saw where they, that their data security is great, whatever. But that's a very fair point. You're not just putting casual information into the out there. You're putting your financial stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, financial could mean a lot of different things, but how safeguarded that financial information is going to be and what compliance requirement do you have either from the SEC licensing perspective or from other investors who might be investing in your fund, I guess. So from the fund reporting perspective, there are some very unique requirements. So yeah, again, that's a very interesting option, and maybe other companies care for that, so maybe pay attention to that. But seems like some companies are able to do that. But again, on-premise and AI native, they don't line up, I guess, in my mind at least. Okay, so we have Repeat MD, again, very technology-centric company, even though they are serving healthcare marketplace, but their business model is very e-commerce-like. They have B2B SaaS, B2B2C, marketplace component in that. So again, you are looking at technologies such as your NetSuite, Salesforce, HubSpot. Those are probably going to be most common in these spaces. And then FP&A is probably going to make sense when you are going to have so many different data silos and systems. And that's why they are using for this particular purpose. This is one more DTC companies. And again, if you look at the trend and theme, this is going to be very Shopify, very NetSuite, centric, customers. This is where NetSuite does well, and they have integration with all of those. They are not going to have integration with other ERP platforms if you are in other industries. Um, okay, I'll keep going here unless you
Yeah,
guys want
one
to.
quick one on this
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Just on the bottom of that page, if you're familiar with pivots and basic Excel formulas, you basically understand Aleph. Excel and Google Sheets add-ins allow them to work with each team's preferred tool. You mentioned that they're showing up in a lot of places. I think there's a lot of people where that's intriguing, where that you don't have to have the disruption of having your teams learn new tools. They can pretty much use something very similar to what they're used to.
Well, it's easier said than done. To be completely honest, the only thing you are getting, Phil, as part of this is rather than having just plain Excel and importing data into that, you just have some live connections from which you can draw the data. But you are literally building everything from the FP&A perspective, from the reporting, budgeting, and that could get very complex. It's not everybody is super competent in Power Query, I guess, and Power Query could be as complex as any other languages out there.
Right, but
Um,
I'm not saying they're delivering that. Although this customer says they did. I'm saying that if that's the story, if that's the pitch,
yeah. Yeah,
that
yeah.
that I can see customers saying that's interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what customers are buying for, and they love this
Yeah.
tool as well. But at the same time, it's not a fair comparison to compare these guys with something like Planful
Oh,
and a plan because
100%,
yeah,
100%. That's not what I was saying. Yep.
yeah, perfect. I think we are aligned. So let's keep moving here. So here, some of the things, for example, let's say if you look at the real Excel, and here what you are going to get, if you look at the right side, then this is where you are going to get all of those connections that you are talking about. So whether you have NetSuite, you have Shopify, etc., all of those feeds are going to be here. Your experience is going to be very similar to using, pivot tables. And in this case, you are simply doing the drag and drop, which looks fancy. But again, you have to do the real reporting building yourself. So you need to know a lot before you can do that. Some FP&A practitioners know that they are good at Excel, but I would not say everybody is. So that's where you will need to know a lot and you need to learn a lot before you can have the same capabilities as what you are going to find with slightly richer, mature FP&A platforms. Now, they have some other things. For example, they have some AI analysis, but this AI analysis, I think you are going to find with the other FP&A platforms as well, even if they might not be as AI native, at least from their marketing claims perspective. But they are doing some sort of anomaly detection here. In this particular case, AI can do a lot, but this is just AI powered. It's not necessarily AI native. And again, when we look at AI native, we would think that this is going to be slightly more agentic capabilities. It doesn't seem like they have that. The way we like to see the state of AI native. So this would be more AI powered.
And I think that you hit on a big value prop, right? It'll help you put some reports together, but it's unlikely it's going to tell you, it's going to point you at what's important. And the other thing I would say is, that it's going to think and that it's going to learn, it's going to grow. I mean, if it's AI powered, then it's less likely to do that. And the other thing I would say is if you're looking to get off of spreadsheets, that's great. And pivots,
Yeah.
that's great. But don't forget there's a product out there called Copilot. And Microsoft is throwing a bunch of money at that. And Copilot is going to start to take some of this data from spreadsheets and do a ton of things with it as well.
Yeah, and generally, Phil, my take on that, and I've played with those products as well. I don't know how much you have played. Generally, they are good at very focused tasks. Even the AI agents as well, they are not good at broader context. So when you talk about FP&A reporting, in general, the context is going to be much bigger. In general, the kind of analysis that you are trying to do, and that's where it becomes very complex, even for a very sophisticated user, because you are looking at so many different joins and tables, and you literally need to be SQL wizard. And sometimes we struggle with that analysis, even though they have been doing this for the last 20 years, I guess.
I agree with that, and I'm not thrilled with Copilot either. Yeah, I have used it. It's very limited at its current thing, in my opinion. And I usually will jump to another AI model and use that if something that's more robust, one of the top 3, 4 models. But I will say that this problem of having this data and having people sitting there trying to manipulate it and understand it and figure out what's important and report on it and all of that. I mean, it's out there and there's a lot of companies working on it. So some of the tools that people have, my point is some of the tools that we have already might evolve to give us more and more capabilities just within those tools.
Great points, Phil. Great points. Thank you so much for that. All right, if you guys don't have any other comments on this, we'll keep moving. By the way, I think one thing that I want to touch last year is it's saying drill down completed. So this could be the drill down capabilities that you were talking about, Phil. I don't know whether you guys can see this or not, but this is a pop-up here, and you are looking at the real drill down in terms of the commentary as well as explanation that you are able to get from AI. So I think that's fairly powerful in my mind, at least. Okay, if you don't have any other comments, now this is where this gets really interesting. So everybody talks about AI, and this is just a demo that we took the screenshot of. So here, obviously, you are using some sort of prompt, and you are trying to analyze, and you are trying to create these management accounts. And here you have just the duplication, and it's kind of funny, right? It appears very much like the way you would use ChatGPT, because it does not make any sense why you would have three duplicate categories there. And for the most part, I guess, I mean, these guys are going to say it's because of data. I get it. Right? But at
That
the
does
same
not
time,
fix the problem.
it's creating problems. Yeah. So that's where my problem is. I mean, even though people talk about AI's power, but AI is not there yet overall in terms of its capabilities, to be completely honest. It can provide some assistance, I would say, from the to explain something, maybe detect anomalies, but you don't want to rely on AI to do any sort of financial analysis, because as you can see, it just gets confused when you talk about any complex use cases. The attention span is very low in general. And here, one more thing that I want to touch on is overall, when you look at the kind of permissions as well as the governance flows that you are going to have with the majority of the FP&A platforms, they are very, very, very deep and nested and hierarchical, the way their hierarchies are structured, because the way budgeting process works is you need to have a lot of different permissions. It's not that easy process. The data is very confidential. You don't want to share your HR data or budgeting data, I guess, with anybody else in the company. So you need to have a lot of safeguard, even though the data does not impact your operations. So that's where your permissions are really handy, and they have very complex and they get very confusing in some of these FP&A platforms. And sometimes people don't appreciate that. They are like, okay, what is that? Why do you need all that? Because of that, you are going to find a lot of issues that you are not seeing data, you are not seeing the report, but that is all because of the control that those systems are designed for. So obviously, this is a very easy system, but at the same time, you are going to lose on control. So keep that in mind. I'll keep moving here. So now this is a very interesting slide, and this is something that nobody talks about in the market. And this is the point that I mentioned on several different AI native reviews that we have done. So here they are talking about sub-processors. Okay, and sub-processors would be any sort of technologies that they are using underneath to be able to deliver, whatever they are delivering. Now, a lot of these technologies are going to have AI native component as well. So you need to be really careful, even though if the company claims that, you know what, I am taking all measures and safeguard to protect your data. But let's say if your sub-processor, and this is almost like a subcontract arrangement, the only difference is that you just don't have that risk visible to you. You don't understand it well enough. From your perspective, it's just going to be a black box that you are buying called Aleph, but then underneath you have a lot of different vendors, and sometimes they are going to be so intertwined that you don't even know what risk you are sitting on. So this is the first time where we have seen a company releasing sub-processors, because most likely these customers are requesting. I would love to see this from the other AI native vendors as well, because this is how you would know the real risk of your very sensitive data. And when you talk about data such as your bombs, recipes, that's where the core IP is of 90% of the manufacturing companies. For SaaS companies, it's going to be their secret sauce, whatever they have, either pricing estimation. And I mean, you need to be careful with that data, in my mind. If you guys don't have any other comments, I'll keep going here. We don't have a lot of time, I guess.
I want you to get through these last few.
Yeah. So let's probably spend just maybe a minute or two on these. This one, again, this is the Reddit comment. And here, this is the comment coming from this user, and they are saying, we are switching away from Adaptive, debating switching to another FP&A platform versus Google Sheets with Aleph. Curious to hear. So this is the question that they have asked. Adaptive, I am not entirely familiar with that platform, how good that is. But here, FP&A software guy is saying good choice switching from adaptive. In my experience, it's very rigid and you have to fit your model into a square box. Not a lot of flexibility on anything. Aleph is one of the newer vendors and not really proven out at the enterprise level yet, but enterprise could mean a lot of different things. To be completely honest, obviously it's not going to be as rigid, the kind of model that they have from the process perspective as well as from their design perspective. You have some more names here, Pigment, TM1, and again, we are going to review all of them. TM1, Oracle, they are all enterprise players. Pigment may be slightly more mid-market. But again, the overarching sense on the slide is that this is probably not going to be as comprehensive overall. One more here, this is also coming from Reddit. So the lag, I guess, is a very interesting point that you need to pay attention to. And the reason for that is because when you make live connection, that means you are going to experience a real lag. And you have no idea how slow that could be, because 90% of the APIs, they are not necessarily designed for this kind of heavy lift. And you can impact your operation system as well. So you might want to be a little careful there. Even though they are doing ingestion, as far as my understanding goes, from Fivetran perspective, but even then, you will have slowness in your FP&A operation, as well as in your core operations as well. So even though on paper it sounds great that it's easy, but you are going to lose a lot, I guess, from the speed perspective. So keep that in mind.
And they're saying that that's a NetSuite issue. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we could know that. And especially generating for the first time when the data actually has to flow from one place to another, like you say, that can be painful.
So the only reason why it is NetSuite issue is because when they are going to retrieve this data from, let's say, Shopify, Amazon, obviously that is going to be faster. NetSuite is going to be slower. And the reason why it is slower is because it does a lot more heavy lifting underneath. The data is far more hierarchical. It needs to make a lot more joins underneath. That's why it feels NetSuite is the problem. NetSuite is not the problem. The purpose NetSuite is designed for is where the problem is. Because again,
that's my point exactly. You stand up a ticket, NetSuite's going to come back and say nothing's broken.
Exactly. And that's with any ERP. And that's why everybody hates ERP, because they don't necessarily understand that you need that data connectivity from the ERP perspective. So again, the problem is for the FP&A workload. That's why it's always a good idea to bring that data somewhere. The way the legacy FP&A vendors, the way they would approach this. Obviously, this is easy from the customer perspective, but customers don't necessarily understand what they are going to lose by taking this. So just one more slide. And again, a lot of people have complained about NetSuite's load times. Again, that's not fair in my mind. They need to understand how ERPs are supposed to work, I guess. Yeah, and some people are talking about flexibility is a double-edged sword. Less structure, meaning, results and reports if new dimensions are added to source data and there are checks and balances. So that's what you are going to lose. You are not going to have as much control, and you have to do a lot of heavy lifting yourself. So some people get it if they have used a lot of different FP&A platform, but that might not be clear to everybody.
Well, and just to tie back to real-time reporting, that's using real-time data. That is, if that's, I've always really pressed hard with teams that make that a wide requirement, because most of the time it's not. Most of the time, most of the information you need, you don't need it to be real time. There can be nightly batches. There can be a couple times a day. There's ways to make it so the data is fresh enough to be useful. If these guys are talking about we want real time reporting between NetSuite and or an ERP and anything, I would say there's going to be some disappointments most of the time.
That's a bad design decision, because your study it doesn't need to be real time.
And it's at the requirement level where someone needs to push back and say, tell me exactly why you need this by the minute, right? Because you're going to create so much API call traffic. It's going to be horrendous to manage.
For technical people, it's exciting just because they like real time, because it's so cool. Well,
it's very cool. I really got to know if I got 20 widgets or 15 sitting on the shelf. I mean, I don't know.
Exactly. More comments, guys?
I just think as a summary, I feel like, part of the reason I went a little deeper on research on this one is because I just didn't find I felt like I knew enough right? This is one that there's some things about it that are pretty nice. It's simple. Not a lot. The adaption should be better. It's got a pretty narrow lane. I don't think it's really thinking AI. I think it's gonna improve when the vendor brings you a new update. It's not going to learn as it goes, from what I can see, to the not AI native thing. So I don't think it's like a bad thing, but I'm not sure if I'm buying this solution where I learned enough. Now, maybe they do a demo and the rest of it, but I don't know. I learned enough to say, geez, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, everybody's going to have different needs. So yeah, thank you so much. Andy, go, please.
I was just going to say, one of the comments that Phil made earlier was when he used Oracle's FP&A system, it was a little bit challenging, a little bit difficult, clunky, whatever you want to call it. I think this product is a perfect example of recognizing a lane, a market, an opportunity, and creating the exact tool that could be perfect for a lot of companies.
Exactly. And that's how the majority of the AI native vendors, they are just attacking SaaS and tech and, and they just feel that it's all easy in that world. It's different, I guess, for everybody. More comments, guys?
Yeah, I do think, if I'm in their lane, I bet you it's relatively affordable. I don't know, but I bet it's reasonable and pretty easy to run down. And to your point, FP&A, you're not necessarily risking the core workflows of your business. You're just putting something there for you to get better information and better management information and reporting out of. It may be low risk for a lot of people too. So I can definitely see, all of these that we're going to look at that are kind of in the same thing before we get to enterprise as maybe being, a relatively low risk bet to take. But I would say on your data example with the sub programs running or what word you used, I dive into that. I dive into that pretty deep. The sub processing.
So, yeah, I'll have one comment, Phil, on that when folks like Khosla and your Bain like investors are going to be involved, there's nothing going to be relatively affordable, I guess.
Well, actually, I've had Bain be an investor. They're more just you're a portfolio. They're not touching you. Yeah. You're a portfolio that someone else is packaging, or someone in their department is packaging.
But overall, I mean, these guys are trying to make money, right? So
yeah, they make money by you growing and by you being eventually profitable. I hear that 100% and being resold. Yeah, it's that enterprise value where Bain makes their money.
Yeah, exactly, guys. All right, any more comments or can we wrap?
That was good, Sam. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys, for joining in. And we are doing these webinars, and the best way to know about them would be events and webinar page on elevateiq.com or subscribe to our newsletter. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.